Hello, welcome to the debate on Sky News. I'm Martin Stanford. Here's our take on President Obama's diplomatic week, visiting the leaders of the world's dominant oil producer and the world's largest democracy. He spoke of human rights and boosting economic ties.
So for all these reasons, India and the United States are not just natural partners. I believe America can be India's best partner. I believe that.
Then it was onward to Saudi Arabia, where talks with King Salman focused on terror and oil. Barack Obama, president of the most powerful nation in the world, has met with the leader of the largest democracy. During a three-day trip to India, he called for religious tolerance, gender equality, the dignity of the individual, and how the two nations can become best partners. Now, as usual, the Democrat commentator Jeffrey Robinson is standing by for us in New York, and Armstrong Williams is joining us from Washington, D.C. Armstrong, a worthwhile trip, do you think?
To which country?
Well, to India, we start with.
Absolutely. President Modi, you remember President Obama visited there in 2010. And India wasn't really the focus of the trip at the time. It was more Pakistan. The fact that India and the United States are two strong democracies, having President Obama sit in that box for 2 hours in that weather as India showed off its top military with a lot of Russian tanks and equipment and very little from the United States. That should give the president a little pause. But I think it's important symbolism for the people of India because it really tells the world that India really has a place on the world global economic stage.
And Jeffrey Robinson, the two men appeared to get on. Lots of talk of another bromance.
Well, let's hope so, because Armstrong is perfectly right. It's a very important part of the world. It is also, population-wise, technology-wise, it is also a nuclear power. And you disregard India at your peril.
Well, let's now go to New Delhi, the capital of India, and Colonel Singh Rathore is the Minister of Information there. How pleased was India to welcome the President of the USA?
Well, let me say that India and all the citizens were very excited by the President of the United States being here. And, of course, the Prime Minister is a very popular figure in India. And every frame on television, which was very well covered by all the news channels, was watched very keenly by all the Indians, especially the chemistry between both of them, and the great amount of strides that we've taken forward. Yes, a very exciting week, despite the rains during the Republic Day parade. I think the spirit was very high, very demonstrable of the feelings, what everybody felt with the President of the United States with us.
Let's talk about business, shall we? First of all, American businessmen often complain that it's really difficult to try and set up a business, to get a business going and to smooth out all the problems when dealing with an Indian location. Do you accept that criticism?
Yes, absolutely. They're right about their concern, and that's why our Prime Minister time and again says that instead of red tapeism, we're going to lay out a red carpet for them. It's going to take a lot of effort. But we are on a mission, and we will do it, and we will achieve it.
Let me bring in Armstrong and Jeffrey now, who are joining in the conversation. That's key, though, isn't it, Armstrong, that you can get some really meaningful business relationships, some meaningful trade with this huge country and its vast population?
Oh yes, and also, as far as India is concerned, they talked about some working together in a very bilateral way on their nuclear program. They expect to even make big announcements. And what is not seen as often beyond both presidents is the fact that they bring their top trade people, some of their top officials to do the heavy lifting, working on things that they can do in a very substantive way that will move the country forward. Because listen, there's one thing that the United States and India has in common that I don't think any of us has mentioned yet, and it's that place called China. China is not only a threat in some ways to the United States, but it's an even bigger threat to India. And it makes all the sense in the world for President Obama to shore up our support and alliance with India as this threat continues to loom coming from China.
Jeffrey, is that mutually exclusive relationship then, that the Americans cuddle up to the Indians because they don't want to cuddle up to the Chinese?
Well, that's certainly part of it. The other gorilla in the room, of course, is Pakistan. The president's visit in 2010 centered on that. And I'd like to ask the minister, given the less than ideal relations that both India and the United States have with Pakistan, what was discussed, what can be done, and can the United States count on India, or does India even have any influence when it comes to Pakistan and the fight against Al-Qaeda and the Islamic terrorists?
It's in any case, the terrorism is a global threat, and hence it's just not one country alone, but a combination of various countries that needs to fight it at levels of course, the insurgents and the terrorists themselves, but also on the financial aspects of it, and that's where we moved ahead, and we've had agreements with the United States on how we can control the money laundering and the funding, terror funding that goes on in the world. Of course, the United States has also put pressure on Pakistan to rein in and to control and to absolutely curb the terrorist activities in their country. On the eve of the visit, of course, the Pakistan banned certain organizations, froze certain accounts, but it has to be a long-term policy decision by Pakistan. Pakistan itself is suffering from terrorism.
Sure, but I mean, just to press the point on that, would it not be ideal if America, Pakistan and India can work together to try and have more effective anti-terror measures?
Why not? Absolutely. And India is absolutely open to it. Pakistan is one of the key stakeholders to reduction of terrorism in the area. It has at some point of time propagated it, and now it's a victim of its own policies, even if it's backyard policies. Jeffrey?
Yes, Minister, does India even have any influence with Pakistan?
Well, we have the sort of influence that any neighboring country can have over its neighbor. We are militarily very strong. We have in the recent times, on cross-border firings answered very aggressively. But that's not a long-term solution, is it? And hence, we will have to work on a very comprehensive policy to curb and reduce global terrorism all around.
Colonel Rathore, can I just talk about another topic which I know was brought up by the President, and that is gender equality. Here's a man who's got 2 daughters growing up fast, and he wants to see a world, whichever country they live in, or with fathers like him, whichever country they grow up in, have equal opportunity. Do you accept India's got a long way to go to achieve that?
We need to cover that distance as fast as possible, and that's why in this Republic Day parade we demonstrated the women power, women in the armed forces, women in different spheres of life. Just prior to the Republic Day parade, the Prime Minister spoke to the nation and on Save the Girl Child and Educate the Girl Child. We're trying to bring it into every sphere of our activity, to bring it into our mind space. Understand that in the rural areas and even in urban areas, the mindset towards a girl child needs to change in India. It's many decades of fallacy that people have. We have to work on it. The time is less, but the government, as you can imagine and as you can see, is working aggressively towards it.
It's interesting the President bothered to mention it, Jeffrey.
Well, you can understand why he mentioned it, because it's an important thing. What concerns me is the fact that culturally and religiously, there is no indication that it will change. I don't know why it would, just because the Indian government wants it to change. When you go out into the more remote areas, they're not listening to the government about that stuff. They're listening to their religious and cultural leaders.
Unless we don't put in an effort, we don't move in the direction, till the time we don't sensitize the population, we don't make them realize that a girl child is as good as a male child, we will not move ahead. Remember that we've eradicated polio from our country by a campaign, through a concerted effort. We can do the same even now.
Can you change attitudes? And we hear, I know there are high-profile cases of attitudes to women, women who've been attacked, and the judicial system doesn't seem necessarily to treat those cases particularly fairly, or it seems to have a very male bias to it. Can you change that in the next generation, in the next few years?
Martin, my take on that is that it's not through a judicial system or policing only that you can change the mindsets of people. I think it is the attitudes of the people through a concerted approach, through education, through society changes, through leaders through religious leaders, and perhaps from the film industry, from the television. These are the ways that you will gradually bring in the importance of a girl child and change the society.
One other topic, one other theme, I think, which came up in the conversation, this loops us back into business, is that of climate change. Now, I know America's a long way further down, if you like, the developed economy, and they're looking at new energy sources. Do you accept, as part of today's Indian government, that it's important that a massive country like India also embraces the problems of climate change and tries to do its bit to reduce emissions?
Climate change is a global problem. It's affecting all of us. And like our Prime Minister very candidly put it across, that we don't face pressures through countries or people, but we face the pressure that what are we going to hand over to our next generation? And hence we will work towards the greening of our industries. And for that, the United States is ready to help us.
Is that an opportunity, would you say, Armstrong, then, for American businesses who are further down the track in developing clean energy than perhaps the Indians are? That's one area of natural collaboration?
You know what? In the sort of the intergovernment climate negotiation, India has constantly argued against greenhouse gas mitigation commitments for developing countries. They've always fought it. They feel that it's a burden on them, given the number of people and the vehicles that they have. They just think that this is just such an overburdensome for them to even try to even contemplate. I think it's unfair to sort of compare the climate change progress that we've made in the United States with the problems that India has to face every day, and especially it has such a huge segment of poverty and the different classes there in that country. But I think we've seen progress. Obviously, there's much more progress that can be made, but I think they're far more challenged in that area than we are.
Is that fair, Jeffrey, that if you like, the Green lobby have to be patient with countries like India? They will get there, but they need a bit more time?
Well, they have to be patient. There's no evidence that they will ever get there. That's the hope and that's the wish, but it may not happen. After all, you're talking about a huge population. You're also talking about a huge rural population. But that's why trade is so important, because trade, once you have a really healthy trade situation going in both directions, then businesses have an influence. And when it comes down to money, people tend to listen a lot more than when you simply hit them with rhetoric.
Colonel Rathore, would you put trade as the biggest winner out of this week's exchanges?
I think undoubtedly we've moved ahead in cooperation in different fields, be it defense, education, manufacturing, trade, services, finance. But the most important thing I feel is the feel-good factor between the people of the two nations. The coming together of the two nations, the coming together of the President and the Prime Minister of India, and setting up, firstly, sending message to the bureaucrats that we will resolve, no matter what, the issues that we are faced with jointly and move forward. And as well, now setting up of a hotline between the President and the Prime Minister so that any issue that comes up can be resolved at the earliest. I think it all gets summed up by forward we go together. And together, and with shared partnership, we progress and all of us progress together.
Joining us from New Delhi, Colonel Rathore, the Minister of Information. We thank you very much. President Obama then flew from New Delhi to Riyadh to meet the new Saudi leader, King Salman. Just an hour after lecturing India on tolerance and women's rights, were these the subjects he brought to the Saudi table? Well, let's talk to Dr. Ibrahim Nahas, who's Professor of Political Science at the King Saud University in Riyadh, and he's close to government circles. Professor, thank you for being with us. Was it significant that the US President came to your country this week?
Yes, thank you for this meeting. Yes, it's very significant for us in Saudi Arabia to have President Obama at Riyadh, actually. That mean a lot of things for us. First, we thank President Obama for coming, and that show us actually the importance of Saudi Arabia to the United States, and that mean actually our relation with the United States is very strategic, and that strategy for a long time, and it will be in the future, and that send a message actually, or signals to all the world that the Saudi and American relationship, it will be very good in the future actually, and working for many issues that we worked before. And then we can have a very well cooperation actually in many issues in the future with the United States. And this is a good message actually to the Middle East countries and to the European countries, as well as to the Russian and the East Asian countries, that when we have this strategic relationship for this long time, that it will be good for the stability, for the security, and fighting a lot of things and a lot of wrong things actually in our region. And the good thing actually with the President Obama, in addition to his visit, that his top official people from his administration and from the former actually administration of George W. Bush.
Let's bring in Jeffrey and Armstrong, who are joining us again. Jeffrey, there was some debate, wasn't there, as to whether the President, let alone the First Lady, should have gone at all?
You can't disregard Saudi Arabia. We have strong economic ties with the Saudis. We also have strong strategic alliances with the Saudis. What's interesting about the visit is not necessarily the President and King Salman, but the President and the Deputy Crown Prince. Now, the next in line is Prince Narek, who is the seventh of what is known as the Sudari Seven. King Abdulaziz had a favorite wife named Sudari, with whom, and he had 7 sons with her. And each of them are primary, or have been primary in line for succession. What's so interesting is the Crown Prince is not one of Abdulaziz's sons, but it jumps to the grandchildren. He was educated in the United States. He has very strong intelligence ties with America. He has strong ties with the White House. And what I would like to know from Prince Nahas is, from Dr. Nahas, does this mean that Saudi Arabia, King Salman, is very aware of the relationship with the United States, and therefore has chosen as 2 successors down a man who will assure the friendly relations with the United States? How important is that is Prince Mohammed for Saudi-American relations?
I believe Mohammed bin Nayef is a very good man to lead the country in the future, and his relation with the United States is very strong. And we know a few months ago he was in the United States, and he met many high official people in security, in national security. And that means we have a good relationship in the future to fighting terrorism, to have good ties actually in fighting funding for terrorist groups, or in any other relation that would be strong in our national security. I believe Mohammed bin Nayef is a very nice man for our relation with the United States in the future. So it will be a good moderate guy.
Thank you, Professor. Armstrong, do you agree that it was better to go, not only to pay respects, but to cement what relationships America has with Saudi Arabia?
You know, it's actually strange that our president rarely attends state funerals. He usually sends his vice president or some high-ranking official. It's also, if you go back a couple of weeks when Paris had the march of 1 million people and all the heads of states, it was cited that security concerns, they just did not have enough time, and yet he could just leave India on a whim and find time to go and visit and pay respects to the king. I mean, the Saudis have made it clear they're out to destroy the U.S. energy market through fracking. They're clear that they did not like the president's position and not supported him in taking out Assad in Syria. They despise his relationships with Iran and the fact that the president is attempting to negotiate in some nuclear pact with Iran, which they think it is dangerous. In fact, I don't see all the good, and I know we've had a strong relationship with the Saudis since around 1939. I don't see anything that the Saudis have done good for us lately. Most of the terrorists on 9/11 came from Saudi Arabia. We allowed them to get back on those airplanes and return home. And while the professor sits and glows about the relationship between the Saudis and Americans, I think most Americans who read this history and understand it and watch what is going on doesn't understand what the relationship anymore. It seems as though the Saudis have the kind of relationship they want with the United States when they need the United States, but I see very little that our president in this country gets out of it, except the president continuing to bow to the Saudis, something that they don't deserve.
Professor, do you think it's a one-sided relationship, as Armstrong describes?
No, I don't think so. It's one-sided relationship. If it's one-sided relationship, it wouldn't be for almost 70 years working together for actually everything in this region and around the world. Our relation with the United States is two-side, actually from the both ways. We have a strong relationship in military, economy, and the United States is working with Saudi Arabia in stability in the Middle East and security in the Middle East, fighting terrorism, finding many solutions toward many issues around this region. And without this two sides relationship, it will be disaster actually for the Middle East. And we know Saudi Arabia is very moderate in political agenda in the Middle East and always working for stability. So if we don't have Saudi Arabia, for example, for the United States, it will the United States politics in Middle East will be suffer actually for many issues.
Professor, could you address one of the issues that Armstrong raises, which is the Americans' relationship with Iran and how a deal may be on the table about the use of nuclear power generation for electricity?
Yes, actually, if we talk about the nuclear program of Iran, for example, we would go for not having this at all and that to talk. I think King Salman mentioned this for President Obama, to find a solution actually for the negotiation with Iran, and we will not agree for the Iranian to have this kind of weapon. Otherwise, we will look for this kind of weapon. Actually, that's the public opinion here in Saudi Arabia and in Arabic countries and Gulf states. Actually, if Iran has this kind of weapon, we would go through it in any way. So this is very clear for the world, not just for President Obama. And I believe President Obama should work very strong in coming months to finish this and to work for other issues that we look forward, like fighting terrorism, ending the Syrian issues, the Yemeni issues, the stability in Egypt, like these issues.
And Jeffrey, do you think those issues, if progress could be made, it makes the relationship with Saudi Arabia worthwhile, and we just have to put up with the fact their society has a very different attitude to women. They're not allowed to drive. They have a different attitude to freedom of speech. They've put a blogger in jail for 1,000 years and so on. We just have to live with those things, do we?
You know, you have to play the cards you're dealt. You can't always change the dealer. The point is that Saudi Arabia is just as worried about their neighbors as we are, especially worried about nuclear Iran, because if push came to shove, who would they call to help defend them but the United States? Which makes the appointment of the Deputy Crown Prince Mohammed all the more significant. And I'd like the professor to go back to that for a minute, because in appointing a grandson to be second or now third in line, he is negating all of the other first-generation sons of Abdulaziz who felt entitled to one day become king, because that was the traditional thing. So King Salman, whose son, by the way, was the first Arab astronaut and flew on the space shuttle. King Salman has taken a very big personal risk in discounting all of his half-brothers and going for a grandson. And that grandson, again, was educated in the United States and has strong American ties. And I want to pin the professor down specifically on Mohammed and what that says for the future of that relationship.
Yes, for the world, actually, outside the United States, yes, as what we heard, yes, this looks very risk for King Salman to address this time. But in the opposite way here in Saudi Arabia, the public opinion very happy actually with this case when they find King Salman at the first night actually to pick Prince Mohammed bin Nayef as the third in a line to be a king in the future. That for us actually to be very stable in our government in the future and our stability, because a lot of people looking for the future. As we know, most of the sons of King Abdulaziz very advanced in their actually age. So we look actually for the third generation, and the pushing for or the support of Prince Mohammed in the society, I believe it's more than 70 to 80% of the people, they for a long time looking for him to be in the third in the line actually.
Dr. Nahas, Professor of Political Science at King Saud University in Riyadh, thank you. Jeffrey Robinson in a snowbound New York, thank you. And Armstrong Williams in Washington, thank you too. That's it for this edition of The Debate. Until next time, goodbye.